Boom. Alright, so from our last class, we talked about yeah, someone's mic is on. From our last class, we talked about functions. Any questions from functions? Any questions from function? Aye, no questions. Um, who is there anybody that at least went back to what we did, try to practice something? If you know you did, let me know. Probably just raise your hand on the using meets whatever. You went back. Alright, raise the did. Who else? Akindele didn't. Madu Akola wasn't in class yesterday. I don't think Sebastian was, so basically it's only Akindele that wasn't in class yesterday. That was in class yesterday, aside Arinze, and didn't attempt it. Alright. Oh, okay, you did too. Akindele, can you hear us? Hello, Akindele, can you hear us? I guess people are generally struggling with network today. So let's go on. So we talked about functions and stuff. I'll also try to create a Git repository so that I can have access to all of these things we do in class. Sometimes it can be helpful to help you remember some things. All right. Today we're going to look at. I think we looked at all the things we're supposed to look at functions. I asked us to do research on different types of functions in different types of functions in JavaScript. Types of functions in JavaScript. Alright. So let's check our Medium. Functions that are similar, blah 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 blah. That's not what I want to see. Function expressions. I want to see the types, dude. Yeah, anonymous function, that nameless functions. Immediately evoked functions. That's IFE function. Yeah, I told you guys I was supposed to show you IFE functions. Nobody reminded me again. Constructor functions. Hoisting, arrow functions. And probably others. Alright. So a couple of them. That's things you should look at on your own. Alright, so that's by the way. So let's talk about immediately evoked functions and then we are good to go. Are you guys still with me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so
Yes.
immediately invoked functions. Remember I said we call functions or we invoke functions. So I have this function evaluates inside this guy. This function can never perform any task until I call it. How do I call it? By putting this, writing the name and putting this parenthesis in front of it. So that's how you call a function. And then we said that until you call a function, that's when the function performs the actions within this code block. But then we said there's a special kind of function, the IFE functions, immediately evoked function expressions that do not need to be called. Alright. We even have another one, recursive functions. So recursive functions kind of like repeatedly call each other. Repeatedly call itself. depending on a particular condition. So it will execute call itself again, depending on a particular condition. That's quite advanced, or at least not part of the basics. So I'm not going to go get into the details. But IP functions are just regular functions, right? The only difference is they call themselves. So let's write a regular function. Let's comment this guy out. I will do a regular function. Um, okay. The function. It's not going to take anything really. So inside it to say, the main function reg function, just reg for regular, right? Yeah. Just say console log. I'm a regular function. But can be an IFI if you try. Just to confirm. Okay, we're recording. So I'm a regular function but can be an IFI. Mainly, I always mess up the spelling of this IFI. Mainly evoked function expression if you try, right? So we call this guy console. Sorry, not console. Call this guy, right? This is how we call a function. So let's go live and see what it gives us. I'll open our console. There's our console, yeah. Let's reload again. I'm a regular function but can be an IFI if you try, right? That means if you hadn't called this function, if we hadn't called it, you wouldn't have displayed that guy there. Now we're no longer calling it and the guy is off. Now, this is a regular function that wasn't called. How do I make a regular function an IFI function? See what I'm going to do. Enclose the whole function in a parenthesis. Intermediate value is not a function. Hold on. So it's calling it, but I'm getting an error. 9102. Blah, blah. It's not a function, so let me find out why it's giving me that. Hopefully it's not because of this. I'm still getting that. So let's check it. I feel functions JavaScript. Oh, yeah, sorry guys. Enclose in parentheses, put another parenthesis behind it. Yeah, should be good now. I'm sure this guy is not messing with us. Inspect. I'm still getting this error. Let's check again. IFI function JavaScript. Blah 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 blah. be surprised if I figure out that Ivy functions only take nameless function. That's arrow functions. I will be surprised to figure that out. If that is why this guy is complaining. I'll be shocked. Let me see. Yes, I'm still having the same error. I can't even see what I'm doing wrong. A function, whatever you want to do, call it. So what is wrong with what I'm doing? Oh, hold on. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Okay, yeah, it's inside here. So it's fine. It's fine inside here. I can't see what I'm doing wrong. So let me lift this guy and assume this is wrong. And then I put this guy here. Let's see. Also, hello. Still getting the same error. Concord type error, intermediate value by it's not a function at functions JS 106. This guy is going functions JS. At this point, I can't see why this guy is giving us this. But let's stop this recording so we don't. So class dot excuse me, class.js. We looked at how to use functions to do different things without having to litter the whole file with our logics. So we can put our logics into compartments, into functions, and call them when needed. Alright. Now we can even take things further, right? So there is a concept in programming, OOP. So there are different is it paradigm or paradigm? I don't know how to pronounce it, of programming, right? And OOP is one of them. Some have functional, we have procedural, and the rest. OOP is one of them. Now, what's OOP has? We're not talking of OOP. Believe me, it's a bit. It's not basic, so we're not going to get into the details, right? But there is one thing OOP does. It models everything as an object. So OOP actually means object-oriented programming. Oriented programming, right? We all know what objects are, don't we? At least after this class, if they say objects, you're not going to be thinking of chair, what else are objects? Football and the rest. You already know what objects are, don't we? Are we together?
Yes, sir.
Alright. So, in object-oriented programming, every single thing, every single entity is modeled to be an object. What do I mean by modeled to be? Yeah, so I confirm I'm not the only one here. What do I mean by modeled to be an object? We know const person equals, if we can write out the properties of person, the methods inside person, what it means is we are modeling person to be an object. So I can say person's name is, let's say, student. Yeah, let's model students to be an object. Student. What are the features of a student? A student will have a name, right? Can I think of a name? Adamu, Emeka, um, Tinibu. So what other properties of student do we have? Can we have?
Grade 11.
Say?
Age, class.
Age and class. Student is 65 years old. Class is, what student's class? 200. Right? What else? What else can we say to be a student?
GPA.
Alright, so student can have CGPA 1.2. Now there's something else. Apart from properties like this, student can also carry out an action, right? So what else can student do? Students can walk. Now walk is an action, so it's going to be a function, right? Right. So let me do something crazy. So instead of, we just do this console.log. This is also a function. I can walk, right? Yeah, student is screaming. Can walk. Let's assume student just discovered he can walk. What else can student do? What other actions can student do? Students can,
Study.
yeah, study. Console. Hold on a second. Console. I am studying. Alright. Student is not screaming. It's normal to study. So student can do a lot of all these things, right? And then we can also model, say, a car. Const car equals, can have the car color to be red. Alright. Red. Make or model to be, which model? Toyota 2015 Toyota. I don't know how. Just say 2015 Toyota. Toyota 2015. I don't know why 2015, but then 2015. What else can a car have? A car can move. Now that's an action. A car can move.
Yeah.
So, and then I say console.log. The car is moving. Hold on a second. The car is moving. Alright. So we can model things to be objects. That way we have the needed properties, attributes of that object packed in one capsule called called an object. So all the properties of an entity packed in one capsule called an object. Does it make sense? Does it make sense? Are we together?
Please come again, sir.
Alright. So this is how we model things to be objects. Student is an entity, right? A car is an entity, right? Do we understand that part of a car is an entity, student is an entity?
Yes.
Yeah.
It is a thing. Now, in programming, in OOP, what we do is to model things to be objects. That's why I say it's object-oriented programming. Now, we've been able to model student to be objects, to be an object, depending on the attributes we want to look at. So it's easier for us to throw this student around, and whenever we make reference to it, we have all of these things inside it. It can be more complicated than this, really. And then it can be more useful too than this, because this is quite basic. So this is we modeling student to be an object with these properties and the word method. Does it make sense?
Yes, sir.
We model the car
Yes.
too. You can model literally everything. You can model temperature, you can model anything you can think of. You can model it. As long as that thing has attributes and possibly what's it called? Actions it can perform, then you can model that. Alright. Now, when we want to in OOP, we really don't use bare bone objects like this. We use a special kind of object called classes. Classes. I'm sure it's getting more confusing. Because when I say class, we all think of this kind of class, right? But then there's something called a class. Now, a class is like a blueprint. A class is like have anybody seen the architectural plan of a building before? Who has seen the
Yes, sir.
we have seen it, right? Or the model of a building. They build a miniature version of the building, and then you can look at it and then look at the architectural look at the architectural plan, the design, and then do the construction using that. We all have seen it, right? If you don't understand what I'm saying, let me know. I will explain, because I think understanding that will help us understand what we're saying better. Do we all understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
All right. So I'll move on. Now, when you build a house with a particular plan, and use that same plan to build a house in another place with the exact plan, following the exact plan, the chances of the two of them looking alike is like 100%. Is it not?
Yes, sir.
Because you're
Yes, sir.
following the same pattern. Now, classes are like those patterns, those blueprints. They are objects anyway, but they are not really the object itself. They are like the blueprint of the object. We now use them to create objects. Let me know if I can get a more concise definition. What are classes? So this is actually correct, but this I want it to be relative to a programming language. And I want something that will be kind of like plain. I'm seeing too many English. Blah blah blah. So these guys are blowing grammar. We don't like grammar. A class is a blueprint or prototype that defines the variables and methods common to all objects of a certain kind. Thank you. Now, pay attention to this guy. He says it's a blueprint. We understand the concept of blueprint. What does he define? Variables and methods, attributes and methods, properties and methods that are common to all objects. Do we all understand this English here? We all do, right? Hello? If you don't understand that English, let me know.
I understand.
Alright. You guys have to be responding so I know I can move on. Alright. So now, when we create a class, we make it to be a blueprint so that we can create other objects from it. If you've gone to a block industry, you see the mode they use in making blocks. That's like a class. You use it to create. The classes are not blocks. They look like blocks. They are shaped like blocks. Sorry, not the classes. The modes are not blocks. They are shaped like blocks. They look like blocks, but they are not blocks. You only use them to make blocks. I hope that makes sense.
Awesome.
Yes.
Alright, so let's go back to JavaScript with this understanding in mind now. I define a class using the class keyword. So I say class human. Now pay attention. Classes follow camel not camel case, Pascal casing. I told us about sorry, trying to remember the right word now. About how to use the proper casing when declaring variable names, right? When we talked about Pascal cases, kebab, snake, camel casing, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So in whenever you're declaring a class, make sure it doesn't mean if I make it normal small letter, it's not gonna work. It still work, but someone seeing it will be like, is this person an amateur? Don't you know classes follow Pascal casing? So if you're naming a class, use Pascal casing. Capitalize every first instance. If I want to say, so let me say I want to model a student result. I say student results. Capitalize every word. Alright? So let's model a human. A human class human. So this is how we model how we'll define a class. So in OOP, we are not talking of OOP, but that's what JavaScript is trying to do with classes. Basically, JavaScript was doing OOP with prototyping. There's what we call prototypes in JavaScript, but you don't want to go into that. It's one of the most complicated things in JavaScript. So this is like a wrapper around it. Inside it, behind the scene, this guy is still doing prototyping. Alright? So class human, and then you start specifying the properties of human. A human can have a name, um, should be um, let's use this guy. Fine, let's move all of this. Alright, let's put this here. Oh, sorry. So we are assigning yes. Give me a second, guys. So I'm having some distractions. Alright, so yeah, so we have so pay attention. You don't use this guy when you're inside the class. This guy only makes sense inside a real object. So I'll change this to this, change this to this, because now they are like a statement. They are no longer members of an object. They are now like entities on their own. That's why that comma is flagging the error, right? Now we have this guy to be our class, and he has his properties. All right. There is a very important thing. One other important thing in classes called a constructor. So every class has a constructor, and I think in JavaScript it's even allowed. I think it's allowed to not specify the constructor, but then please always specify the constructor of a class. What is a constructor? A constructor is a special kind of function. So it's a method really, it's a function. Remember, methods are functions inside an object. Class is an object, so we can call the constructor a method. A constructor is a special kind of method that is called anytime you instantiate a class. I'm speaking big English, I know. But just have it in mind that anytime you instantiate a class, the constructor is being called. So this is the constructor always should be the guy starting your distance so that you don't get confused seeing it within inside your code. It's always going to be called constructor. All right. So in JavaScript, you're always going to call this guy constructor. It's a function. It can have anything inside. It cannot. It might be empty. It's fine. All right. Now, when I have this constructor here, anytime I want to instantiate a class. So how do I instantiate a class? What does it even mean to instantiate a class? Remember we said classes are not the real objects. Classes are blueprints. So if they are blueprints, they're not supposed to have values itself. It's only when you call them or when you make use of them, just like the way you make use of modes to make blocks, that they now have values. In essence, it doesn't mean they can't have values. Yes, they can. You can have something that have values within the class. But in essence, you are likely going to have these guys without a value. Somewhere up here. Just like this. You can't use const. I don't think that's allowed. So I can't say const or let. Yeah, I can't say this. I can't say let. Either. So pay attention. You can't say var either. So you don't really declare variables in classes. You can only declare variables inside the functions in a class, inside the methods in a class. So this thing I'm doing is not a variable. It's called property. So these are the properties of that class. The properties of that class. Now, yeah, this is fine. You can leave this for now. So I've defined the properties of this human class. Okay, let's call this student because I'm seeing GPA. So let's call it students. This student class. Now, if I want to use this guy to create an instance of a student, what do? I instantiate it. How do I instantiate a class? I can say const. This is me just assigning the instance of that class to a variable. This is not part of what I'm the instantiating of a class calls student 1. Or let's say const Emeka equals, use this new keyword, new students. If I call these students, if I put this parenthesis like I'm calling these students, what I'm doing is to call this constructor. So whenever you call a class, you are indirectly calling the constructor inside that class. Whatever I have inside here, immediately I put this thing, will run. Does it make sense?
Nothing.
Which part of it doesn't make sense? I'm listening. You say it doesn't make sense. Which part?
Can we con Emeka equal to new student?
All right.
Like,
Bye bye, Emeka. You understand this part? I think that's a Akindeleva. Sounds like her.
yeah,
All right. You understand this part, don't you? The whole of this, don't you?
yes.
All right. Now, how do we use this student class to create a student? Remember, we say these guys are like modes. They are like blueprints. We use them to create the real objects. How do we do it? We instantiate it. What do I mean by instantiating? You create an instance of it. Create. Sometimes programming just have a way of using big English for things that are very common. That's why going back to modify your code is called refactoring. And then you are wondering, why refactoring? You'll be hearing big grammar. So creating an instance of the class is called instantiating the class. What do I mean by creating an instance of the class? You modeled a student. Now, when you create a student out of that your model, you say, oh, this one instance. Just like say we use this blueprint to build different buildings. This is just one instance of it. There's another one at so location. There's another one at so and so place. Does it make sense?
Yes, sir.
All right. Akinde, does it make sense?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yes.
All right. So now, if we if we want to create an instance of this class, we use this new keyword. If you don't use the new keyword, you're just making reference to it. But when you put this new keyword and then you call it, put the parentheses behind it, you are creating an instance. This guy is going to return an instance of this class. And when he returns it, you can assign it to something. Let's say the students, okay, let's say students equals new student. All right, does it make sense? So I think I have
Yeah.
students declared somewhere up. So let me say student one. All right, student one equals new student. So this guy will return that instance of the class. We assign it to this person. Now, this guy he returned is what we now call an object. When you instantiate a class, you get an object. I know it's becoming confusing because I thought this was an object. Yes, this is an object. But if you look at it, you see that there are like similarities. The only different kind of objects. Remember I mentioned arrays too are objects and the rest. Maps, sets, they are all objects. This kind of object is an object created from a class, a blueprint. We never specified the properties. It's getting the properties from the blueprint, which is the student class. Now pay attention. If you notice, when we hover over a variable, like we hovered over this one, it will show us the data type to be string, right? For this one. If you hover over this one, it will show us the data type to be a function returning void, means the function is not returning anything. If you hover over this one, it will show us the type to be number, right? Are we paying attention? Now, when I hover over the instance of this class, look at the type it's showing, students. Remember I told you there is object that I told you that object data types are inexhaustible because you can create types by yourself. What we did is to create a type called student. So this guy now, the data type of this guy is student. It's an object, and the object is what? This class, student. So you can use classes to create a data type of your own. If you understand it, it's fine. If you don't, it's fine too. It's a bit advanced. Alright, so let's focus on the basics. Now we've created the instance of this class. But there is nothing here in our constructor. Let's say um, we need to receive values for these guys. What do? Inside our constructor, we say give us name, give us age, give us class, give us CGPA. Alright? Alright, so this guy is reserved. Um, Set of class, let me call it course. That guy is a reserved word. Why is he a reserved word? Because of this guy. Remember I told you this reserved word, you can't use them as this thing, so it's a reserved word. So I'm going to switch this to course also. Now remember I said that whenever we call instantiate a class and put this parenthesis, what we are doing is to call this guy indirectly. And if this is a function and we are calling it, that means we should provide the words parameters, isn't it? Am I speaking French?
Yes.
Alright. What it means is I need
Yes, yes,
I need to provide name here. What is the name? Emeka. What is the age for the 5 years? Very old student. Which course is he doing? He's doing computer science. An old tech bro. Old tech bro. Computer science, yeah. CGPA. Emeka is done. Or so we think. So that's 1.2. Now, we've been able to create the instance of this guy, and we've provided the properties. So let's make this guy to be more personalized. So we say Emeka can walk instead of I am walking. So how do I do it? Name plus. Does it make sense? Does it make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, but it's not going to work anyway, but it makes sense, so it's fine. Name is studying. Alright? Now, if I do console.log, I want to pay good attention to what I'm doing. If I do console.log, student 1, alright, dot, I think I have something called student 1 up here, because why is it giving me evaluate? Where is evaluate coming from? Evaluate is not here. Student 1 dot. Okay, let me ignore the suggestion really, because I don't know where it's coming from. Student 1 dot name. Then we should be able to get Emeka. So I've saved. Let's look at our console. We didn't get Emeka. So the question is why. So let me. Oh, guys, sorry. I've not brought this guy inside here. You know, remember, always make reference to our JavaScript. So class.js. Yeah, should be fine now. Should be fine now. So name is undefined. Remember I told you it wasn't going to work, right? We specified name, but we're not doing anything with it, because this name is just a variable that we are providing to a parameter we are providing to the constructor. This student's name here is still undefined. I could say Emeka here. Alright? and we see Emeka. But it's not seeing this Emeka here. So let me say Ekene. We see Ekene. What it means is it's ignoring this Emeka. Why? Because whatever is happening here is only within this class. I need to now tell it, you see this name here is this guy. You see this age is this guy. How do I do it? So let me take this out. If I didn't take it out, it still override it. How do I do it? I say, pay attention. This. Whenever you want to make reference to any property of a class, be it a method or a regular property, you use this to make reference to it. That's within that class. You say this dot. You can actually say student dot, but always stick to using this dot what? Name equals name. Alright? This dot age equals, we're seeing this keyword again. Equals age. This dot class. We said we're going to call this course. Equals course, and then this dot CGPA equals CGPA. Now if you console log this dot name, we're going to get the value no longer undefined. We are getting Emeka. Fine. Does it make sense?
Yes, sir.
Alright. That means we can now use the dot notation the way we used to use it on regular objects to assess the properties of this guy. Why? Because this guy is an instance of this man here, and is inheriting, not really inheriting, it's like made to be exactly, to have exactly the properties of this guy. We can instantiate student 2. Student 2, and instead of Emeka we'll say Akindele. Alright, Akindele is doing let's say medicine. I don't know what she's doing in school. We don't think Akindele is that dumb, so let's get her 4.2, and I don't think she's 45, so let's say she's 25. Alright, now when I say student.name, student1.name is going to give us Emeka, while student2.name is going to give us Akindele. Alright? Reason, these guys are like an instance of this class, so they have all the properties of this class inside them. Does it make sense?
Yes, sir.
Right. Now this method in this class, alright? This method, I can also access it. So let me say console.log student1.work. It's going to say undefined is working or something. Oh, I didn't call it. It's a method. So because I didn't call it, it's returning the whole function. So I need to call work. Now that I've called work, it's returning void, but it's going to execute what's inside it. So can work. That's what he said. Which guy is giving us undefined? Line 41. Yeah. We're not supposed to log it because it's not returning anything. So let's make it return something. Let's make it return something instead of console logging. Yeah, it makes more sense here. Do we understand this shortcut I'm using? If you notice, this is a function, but it doesn't have a code block. Do we understand it?
That's because it has single statement.
You said?
It's because it has single statement.
Yeah. So when you have a function, an arrow function that have just a single line of statement, you mustn't put the curly brace, and you mustn't use the return keyword. Once you put any single line, If that's a value, it's going to return it. If it's not a value, it's going to execute it and try to return, and it will return void, not try to, it will return void. So there's an invisible return here, and there's an invisible curly brace. This is exactly the same as this. But if you notice, this is longer. So that's why we'll try to shorten it to something very simple. Now if I save, we should be returning that can work for us. And it's saying empty can work, so that undefined has gone. Now, why is it saying empty can work? We have empty this thing here. This guy is undefined. It's nothing. Why? Because I didn't put this. So in his mind, nothing is there. If I put this, it's going to give us the guy we're looking for. Emeka can work. Remember I said to make reference to a property of a class within that class, you use the this keyword. Any questions so far? Any questions so far? Fine. I assume everybody understood what I'm saying. So this can be more complex, but I'm going to stop here. So now we've learned how to create a class. Remember also that this thing can have a value. You can decide to give it a value also. It mustn't always be empty. We've learned how to create a class, how to create, do the constructor of a class, and how to pick, call the methods in a class outside the class. How do you do it? You create an instance of the class. If I remove this thing here, okay, let me just do another one. And I remove this new keyword. And I remove this guy. All I'm just doing is to make reference to the class. So I call this student 3. If I console log student 3, excuse me, I'm just going to get the class because I'm just doing what? Making reference to it. Does it make sense? Does it make sense? Nobody's saying anything. Does it make sense? Oh, sorry. It doesn't make sense, right? Am I the only one here? Alright, so everybody's quiet. Did you guys understand what I just explained?
Sorry, can you come again, sir?
Alright. So I said, if I remove this parenthesis and save this thing, this guy is just me making reference towards the whole of this class. I'm not really instantiating it. I'm only just making reference to it. So if I console log it, I'm just going to get that class. That means if I want to create an instance, I need to use this parenthesis and I need to have the new keyword to create an instance of a class. So that's that for classes. We could, so if you paid attention when I was going through the Arinze, does it make sense now?
Yes, that makes sense.
So every other person, does it make sense now? Hello? I'm sure it's not only Arinze that's in this class. I'm 100% sure that it's not only Arinze that's in this class. Every other person, does it make sense? Akindele, Sebastian, Amarachi, does it make sense? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, can hear you.
Akindele, Amarachi, and Sebastian, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Sebastian and Akindele, can you hear me?
Looks like those ones are not responding. They are Arsenal fans.
Alright. So probably they connect and then move ahead with their lives.
Yes, yes, I can.
Alright. So
I can hear you.
hopefully what I said made sense. Hopefully you understood what I said. So I will move on. I wanted to talk about something. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I remember. So there was a time I was talking about dates. I was talking about maths, array. What else did I talk about? There's even string. There is number. I think we use this to convert a string to number. There's even boolean. So there are a whole lot of inbuilt classes, default classes that comes with JavaScript. All right. These classes have properties we use. We instantiate it and we use it. Some of them are like static classes, so you don't really need to create an instance of it to access the properties. But something like, I know you'll be like, what are static classes? Guys, forget I mentioned that. Alright, forget I mentioned that it's a bit advanced. Probably what we'll start talking of, when we get to Node, it will make more sense. That's why when I told us how to get the um, how to get the current date from JavaScript to use new date. If you people can still remember. Why? Because date is a class, a default inbuilt follow conf class. To instantiate it, to create an instance, I'm saying new. So whenever I do this, it will give me the current instance, the new, and it's the constructor has 4 overloads. So what it means is you have it has 4 how do I put it? There's some who call I think it falls under polymorphism. There's some, I'm trying to remember the exact name. When you have different forms of something, so you can overload a class, or even I think you can overload the method, but you can overload the class. What it means is it's going to have multiple constructors with different signatures. That's different, either name. Okay, yeah. In JavaScript, the name is always constructor, but I think in other languages, the name is the name of the class. So if you have class students, the constructor is going to be small letter student, right? But that's by the way. So the signature, that's the parameters are going to be what to differentiate. So you can have the one that's name, the one that's holding age, but let's not really go into the details of what overloads are. But just have it in mind that it's like different constructors with different signatures. So this date class have like 4 overloads inside it. It's fine if it doesn't make sense, really. So you provide, when you provide a value here, it's going to look for the matching overload constructor and call it. Assume I didn't say that, forget about it. I don't want to go into the details. So now, new dates, what I just want to point out is that we're using new and this parenthesis to create an instance of this class, and we assign it to dates equals. That's why I told you, though when we display this guy, we'll get a string, but it's actually an object of the type date. Same with boolean, same with string, same with Math, I think math is static because we can assess the properties of math without instantiating. Yeah. So it's like an interface, say math dot floor, math dot this, math dot that. We don't need to instantiate it before we can access those guys. So that's that for that. We all have those inbuilt classes in JavaScript. We don't need to specify them by ourselves. There are a couple of them, a whole lot of them. But that's that. Let's move on to something huge, really, something huge. I'll really need you guys to pay attention to this part because this is where it becomes interesting. Um, I guess some people are struggling with network. People are leaving and coming back, leaving and coming back. Right. So this is where it becomes interesting. DOM. 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 The document object model. Yeah, Rinze, yeah?
Hafiz, are you done with the inbuilt classes? Because
Yeah.
the question I have is
Okay, yeah.
regarding
Ask the question, yeah?
the new date and built class.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible to get, should I say, an instance of just the time and not the full date and everything?
You want just the time, right? All right. So
Yes, sir.
let's just because Ariza asked, so let's try to dive a little deep. So you say new dates. All right. So hold on. So this guy, this date class, or this date object now, because it's an instance of this class. So this is a date object. So this date object has plenty things inside it. Look at them. Console.log. First, let's say get the year. Let's say we want to get the year. Actually, didn't need this guy here. Dates. Hold on. Dates dot get full year. This guy will give us the year. If we want to get time, like I used to say, date dot get time. Now this will return, I think, the milliseconds. Return the start time value in milliseconds since midnight. But so this will give you what Arinze is looking for really might not be this. I know, I think he's looking for just the time part of it. So date dot gets, this gives you just the dates. Then which other one gives you? There are plenty of them. It gives you hours. Yeah. This give you hours, they give you milliseconds, minutes, seconds, and gets time. Right, so you can see them, right? You can see the things inside it. You can see the months,
Yes,
the
ma'am.
dates, the full year, the day. So this day returns the number of the day. Like, let's check them out. There are plenty of them, so you can actually experiment. All right, you can experiment. We really don't need to look at all of them because there's plenty. There are plenty of them. Now, if I console log it, we check our guide. You can see the year. You can see the get date. So today is 14th, I guess. Yeah, today is 14th. Then the get day. So it's showing 0 because today is Sunday. Sunday is the first day of the month. Is it of the week? Right? So this day gets you the day of the week. Why this guy gets you the day of the day in the month. So most times the best way to use this is like you do +1 because it's counting from 0. Likewise, month also counts from 0. So if you do get month, it probably give us, this is the 5th month, it's going to give us 4. If we do get months. Get months. Save. It's giving us 4 instead of 5. So these things that count from 0, you do +1 to them if you want to get the real value. Alright. Now, there is something else you can also do. You can also say, let me say time, dates. So aside getting them, you can also do conversions, dates dot to date string, to iOS string, to JSON, to local date string, to blah blah blah. So I'm sure this is the one Arinze is probably looking for, local time string. So let's look at time. Arinze, this is what you're looking for, right?
Yes, sir.
So this is 1929, that's 729. So you can convert them to strings, different kind of string formats. Just do dot to. In fact, if you do dot, you see all the properties available to that instance. Plenty. See, it's plenty. You can even set, like you can change the date and the year and everything. You can set values apart from getting them too. You can set value. Now, something else I need to mention, just because Arinze asked, okay, let me do this thing here. Just because Arinze have asked a question around these dates, is that you can also create an instance, an object, instantiate a date object where you don't want it to get the current object. You probably want it to get an object from the time from somewhere. Let's say I want to provide my own time. I want to create a date object for yesterday's date. So yesterday was 13th, right? 5/2023. So when you receive date inputs from a user from the front side of the website, for you to have access to all of this, you need to convert it to a date object. If not, you won't have it, because this is just a string. Now, if I do this, the values this guy was showing us will change from today's own to yesterday's own. So I save. Let's look at it. Alright, so we're getting not a number. Invalidate. So let's see why we're getting not a number. Let's console this guy. Yeah. So I know why. This guy uses the American JavaScript by default does American this thing. American way of numbering things. The US
Format.
Yeah, American format, yeah. So in the US format is month, day, and year. Not day, month, and year. So it's assuming I'm providing 13th month, and we all know there is no 13th month. So I believe you can actually provide the format. I can't remember anymore. Oh, I think that's Moments that does that. I think it's Moments that does that. But let me just try. Let me just try. This me just try my play around. Yeah, same thing. It doesn't work here. So it's Moment that does that. So to avoid this issue, this is actually one very confusing thing in programming, managing dates. It can be very confusing. It causes a lot of issues because a lot of people have different formats and you don't know what the input is going to send. So personally, I always stick to using these formats. Year, month, day. Why? Because I know that this date constructor will always understand this guy. So for me to do this, that will be 2023 months. This is 05. Sorry, 05. Day. Today is today is 14, but we want to look at yesterday, so 13. So this should give us something that works now. Yeah, so we have something that works because I'm using the right format now. So if you look at today, we see that we have 2023. The get date have changed from 14 to 13. That means the date object created is now for this one, this date I provided, no longer current date. So whenever you provide a date-like string here, JavaScript will try to convert that date to It also accepts this. Crazy, right? It also accepts it. It can even accept something like this too. Second, I think January. I think this can work too. 23rd, 2023. I think this works too. Yeah. So get months. Where is get months? I didn't label these guys correctly. This is dates. This is day. This is months. Yeah. So January should be 0. So we're expecting that line 51 to give us 0. Line 51 0. Yeah. So it's now using this our dates. This January here. So I think even if you shorten it, it will still accept it. Even if you do so you can give it any string that if it's able to convert that string to a date, it's going to convert it to a date. But if you give it an invalid string, it's going to have issues with converting it. Something like this is obviously not going to give us anything. So we're not getting an invalid date. So does it make sense?
Yes, sir. It makes
yeah.
sense.
So there is a whole lot around all of this. So I'll just mention the basics, and as you are using it on your own too, you get to learn all of them. That's why I always keep mentioning practice, practice, practice. If you don't practice all of these things, if you notice sometimes I forget some. There's so much you are going to forget a lot. But with constant practice, some are going to stink. I don't have a book I'm using. I don't have a guideline. This is just coming from my head. Why? Because I've practiced it for a long time. And then at the end of the day, I'm forgetting some. So if I don't keep practicing, I'm going to forget them. A whole lot of them. So guys, I always keep telling you people, there is no easy way of becoming a programmer than to be programming. I had you program. Constant practice. After class, you go ahead and practice some of the things. Basically all. And then go ahead and do more. Because for everything I tell you, there are 1,000 more that I'm not telling you. Those are things you need to figure out yourself. Yeah, it's true. Aris, I've not looked at that your assignments. Hopefully I'll look at it this evening. I just remembered. So before Aris brought me back, I was talking about this guy, the DOM, the document object model. Now, remember I mentioned that our JavaScript code is being interpreted by the browser, right? Right. Now, the browser in JavaScript, the browser documents. If you notice, this guy is a document. This guy is a document. If you don't change the title, it's going to be calling it a document because that's what it is, documents. So let's change the title. Where is the title bar? Where is the title bar? Where is the title bar? Can't see it. Yeah, here. So let's say JS Fedora. Yeah. Yeah. So we've changed the title, so it's showing JS Fedora now. So these guys are like documents. That's what they are referred to as. They are referred to as documents. And in JavaScript, they are modeled to be objects. That means all of these things inside here are represented as objects. What it means is there is an invisible, so let me dom.js. Alright. Done. What it means there's an invisible object. Let's say const document equals that we house all of this our HTML and stuff. And then there is a global object. Actually, that invisible object is a global object called window. There is an object called window that is global. It's like the guy housing everything. inside JavaScript. If I do console.log window, let's see what it gives us. Notice I didn't define window. I didn't. Yeah, so you can see now. I didn't define window. But because it's global, alright, you can see that somehow JavaScript knows where it is. And if we create a new instance of this window, it will return the window object to us. Remember I told you that behind the scene, JavaScript still uses prototypes, not classes. So you can see the prototype here. But you don't need to bother about this. You're probably likely not going to be seeing anybody using it in this recent time. But behind the screen, JavaScript doesn't use class. It uses prototypes. So a window containing a DOM document. So that document, that's the document object model, is inside this window. So let's console.log window and see the things inside it. Yeah, this is a guy. So it's a function with an object. Now, implementation of JavaScript implementation of OOP then was using prototypes, and they're like functions and the rest. So that's why you're seeing this function. Functions were what JavaScript used them to do objects, not classes. Alright. So, but I'm not going to go into detail. But if we access any of the window properties, you see that we can pick it out. So say window dot any of these guys, see the properties. Then we can pick all of them out. Alright. If we create a new instance of the window, we can also go ahead and pick some things. The ones that are not static. Alright. Dots. Now you can see. These ones are the ones that comes when we create the instance. Plenty of them. Plenty. Alright. Now, these guys, because the window objects is global, you can actually access the properties like these documents. For instance, if I say window.documents, let's see what it gives us. Illegal constructor. Oh, okay. Okay, so I need to provide something here. Okay, let me say window.location. Actually, I don't think I need to instantiate this guy to get location though. Yeah, I don't need to instantiate this guy to get a location. So I could do this. Yeah. So the location is undefined anyway. So this window guy, it's a global window.bind, window.apply, window.name. So let's see if it has a name. Let's see if it has a name. Window. And then some other properties. So this guy is global. What it means is we mustn't really make reference to it before we can use it. So I could do something like, before we can access the properties, I could do something like this. Documents. So document is part of the guys inside window. So because they are it's global, I could do document dot whatever without having to say document dot. I don't need to say this. I could just call documents from the global window object. So I don't need to actually create an instance of this document. And then we do dots. You see all the properties or whatever inside that guy. Now, whatever I'm saying here, I'm sure at some point is confusing. So I'm going to pretend I didn't say any of them. It was just me trying to do some explanations. What I was supposed to be talking about is what DOM, the document object model. So that window document, which is this guy, or this guy or this guy is modeled to be an object. That means whatever we have inside it, we can actually do what? Assess it like an object. Alright? As I can say documents dot body. And if I say console.load this guy, the body is obviously going to be an object too. Yeah, it's a HTML element. Now we can see the body. Alright? Now, what is inside body? We could go deeper. Things we want to do. Let's say I want to get the style. Let me get it in a HTML. I think I should be able to get the HTML. Now we're able to get the HTML inside our body. Where is this guy coming from? This HTML. Because this is our body and this is the guy inside it. Does it make sense? Am I making sense, guys? I probably am alone here.
No, sir.
Alright. So now we are able to model this whole of this document to be an object in DOM. That's what DOM does. So I can say document.body.whatever. You can even access the styles if there is any. A whole lot of things. There are so numerous properties, right? In them. Plenty. How to manipulate the DOM? How to manipulate this guy is what we're going to be looking at using JavaScript. For instance, we have this body. We don't want this guy again. We don't want to have this guy here. We want to change it. We want to give it something else. Because initially, when we check out our code, when we run our code here, we get, we get this, my name is blah, blah, blah. We want to change that. We don't like that anymore. But we don't want to change it here. Probably there's a condition.
Your voice is
Yeah, my voice is what?
really low.
Okay. So how about now?
Hello?
Is it better now?
Yes, it is.
Alright. So you all can hear me, right? So let's say we want to change this. We don't like this anymore. But want to change it under a condition or something. Or at least want to change it from JavaScript. So we can say document dot body, right? The whole thing inside body. Dot the inner HTML equals, I will now write another kind of HTML here. Not another kind of, a regular HTML anyway. Let me say I want to use a div. And inside that div, I just want to say, okay, let me have a paragraph too. Now we are doing HTML inside JavaScript. Isn't the Lord wonderful? So let me say we got bored and change the body elements, the body contents. Alright, so let's save and see what we get. Yeah, got bored and change the body content. Why? Because dynamically we are now manipulating the DOM using JavaScript. Does it make sense?
Yes, sir.
Everybody, does it make sense?
Yes, sir.
So in essence, what I mean is everything happening inside here can actually be manipulated from this side, and that is when it becomes interesting. That is when your um, site becomes dynamic, interactiveness when it becomes interesting, it becomes like a live thing. All right. So let's follow. Let's probably use W3 Screw to look at the HTML DOM. So the HTML DOM will have the documents being the object itself, the major objects, the document, and then we'll have the root elements, the HTML. We'll have the elements, the body, and the head. What it means is you can actually do document.html too, and then you have the title that's inside the head elements. Now you have the title, and then you have the contents, the text. While inside body, you have the tags, the element tags, and the rest. So this is like the tree of a DOM. Now, there are, remember we said this DOM is an object, right? And if, sorry, this document is an object. And if you notice, if you hover over it, you see the type. It's a document type, which means it is a class. This guy is a class. And if it is a class, it has properties. So we have DOM methods too. Methods that are applicable to DOM. So let's look at the methods. We have the DOM methods are actions you can perform on HTML elements. So they are like actions inside that class you can perform on HTML elements. So HTML DOM properties are values. So let me mention something really, because some of these guys do inheritance. So there is something called inheritance in classes where a class inherits from another class and it has access to the properties. So don't have it in mind that there's something called inheritance. Alright, so there's something called inheritance where a class is inheriting from another class called the parent class. But I'm not going to go into the details anyway. So let's go back to our DOM. So the HTML can be accessed using JavaScript and with other programming languages in the DOM. All HTML elements are defined as objects. Remember, we are modeling DOM to be an object. So all elements are defined as objects. Alright. So the DOM properties are values of HTML element that you can set or change. So the value of the HTML elements you can set or change are the value, like something like style. You can set and change styles. So the DOM class has the values, which are like the properties, which are like the values of the HTML elements. So the text can say, just like I said, body.innerHTML. So this inner HTML is a property. If you notice, it's not a method. All right. So we can also have methods like documents dot body, for instance, dot, this is a property. Now this is a method. Append child is a method. Query selector is a method. Style is a property. First child is a property, and the rest. There are a couple of properties also. This is a function, a method. So whenever you have a method, you know you're calling it. Alright? So let's go back to our this thing. So the values are the properties, while the values of the elements are the properties, while the methods are the actions you can perform on the elements. The HTML can be accessed using JavaScript and with other programming languages. The programming interface is the properties and methods of each object. So a property is a value. This is just repeating this. So it mentioned is one method get element by ID in the document object. Document dot get element. So this is how you reference, one of the ways you reference elements. Referencing DOM elements. So you can use the get element by ID method. So what this guy does is you provide the ID, which is a string of the element you want to pick. So let me say ID of name. What it means is I should have a guy here. Okay, I have ID of hello already. So let me use hello. I should use hello here. Now when I say document.get element by ID, it's going to return a HTML element. Const hello elements equals document dot. So you're going to return a HTML element, or null if it doesn't exist. If it exists, it's going to return a HTML element, an object of type HTML elements, which in this our case is this div. Alright, if I console log it, this hello element, you see that is that div. Console log hello elements. How is it now? It's not supposed to be now. Document.get element by ID hello. Hello element, hold on. Dots inner HTML. So that guy is really null. Why is it null? Document.get element by ID hello. Oh yeah. So guys, remember we are using this to replace the HTML. So this guy is replacing that one there. This thing we did is replacing this guy. So by the time it gets to this place, it can't see this, that's hello again. So if I comment this out, it won't be null anymore. So we should be able to have the elements now. So we have it, a div with a text, ID hello, and a class of test danger. If I open it, you see all the properties. You probably see inner test or inner HTML or inner test. That's where you see the, so there are a whole lot of this thing inside it. Test content, my name is, title, style, this is CSS applied to it. I'm looking for inner test. That guy will always make outer HTML. No, I'm looking for inner HTML or inner test. So there are plenty properties you can access on that element alone. Another way of grabbing or referencing a HTML element is using the class. So let me create another one. And instead of ID, I want to give it a class. I'm sure we all know what these guys are. We've done classes and the rest. So class name. My name is Emeka. So we have document dot get elements by class name, and then I put name. So let me call this 2, and I call this 2, and I save. We'll have an array of HTML collections. Why do we have an array of HTML collections? Unlike the other one that gave us an element. Are you guys still with me? Or I'm talking to myself?
Yes,
All right. Why do we have an array of elements instead of an array of HTML collections, which are like HTML elements, instead of a single HTML elements like this one. This one is giving us HTML collection. This is a list of elements. Because remember, classes, two elements can have the same class. What this thing is assuming that there is more than one, there is a possibility of more than one elements bearing this class name. So it's going to return a list of possible elements bearing the class. If it's only one, then it's going to return a list with one thing inside it. If there is none, it's going to return an empty list. Then if there is two, like in our case now, it's going to return two elements. So if I console log this guy, you're going to have an array of two elements. But because we are not accessing the array elements, you're just going to have HTML. But if you open it, you see inside it, the length is 0. That's not possible. The length can be 0. Get element by class name. Class name. Let me pick the first guy. Alright, so get elements, the class names, string. I'm wondering why he's not picking this guy. Documents dot get elements by class names. So why is he not picking this guy? Class name. Oh, I have double classes here. Yeah. So I have double classes here. The guy is confused. So let's remove name and use danger instead. Because we want that style. So I have double classes and the guy is like, which likely is wondering which one does this guy want me to take. So this should now return a list of real things, not just an empty list. Hold on. Yeah. So it's now returning a list of 3. We have 3. I think the div on top to have a class of yeah. So have 3 of them. So it's returning a list of 3 elements, and we can access them the way we access arrays using indexes. So if I want to pick out the first one, all I just need to do is to put index 0. So we are just going to look at how to access elements using the attributes today, and then tomorrow continue with DOM. Now we can also access elements apart from class names using document dots get element by tag name, get element by name, get element by tag name ns. So I think let's talk about this guy too. Tag name. Then so let's say I want to get all the, let's say I want to make this a paragraph. So I want to get all the paragraphs. So I can say get element by tag name P. Are we? Yeah, I hope this works. I probably don't remember exactly again. Get element by tag name. So if I console log this guy, should give us the P elements. So P dots blah, 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 done. Should give us this guy, and let me log the inner HTML just to be sure that's the guy is giving us. Alright, so yeah, I need to, because it's showing a list inner HTML, and I come here and I say I am a paragraph. Yeah, I just want to be sure he's speaking the right guy. And yeah, he's speaking the right guy. I'm a paragraph. So can also get by tag name, and I think there is one called name too. Let's see if I can remember what it does. Get element by name. So I think this should be the element's name. Like let me know if this works too. By that, I think it's the element's name itself. Yeah. So let's say I can't remember exactly what this guy takes again. Yeah, the same thing. So you probably just try to find out what this thing is. Check online. Can't remember exactly. But these three are the major ones I'm going to be using. You also can be getting elements by position. Alright, but it's a combination of this and some other things. But you see, classes, IDs, and tag name are one of the most popular guys you're going to be using. So that's how what we're going to do today. And by next class, we'll be done with doing all these basics. Alright, by next class, we are going to start looking at events, start doing things with HTML and JavaScript. So we are going into DOM manipulation proper by next class. Do we all understand? Does anybody have any question for me?
Something I wanted to ask.
All right.
I don't know this get element by ID, by class name, tag name. Is it still possible for me to make use of dot query selector?
Yeah, there's query selector too. So let me even so let me say const abc equals documents dot query selector and query selector. Oh yeah, thank you for reminding me. I've actually forgotten a lot of all of these guys. So selector key of I think this guy takes the can I say member? Hold on. It's been long I used query selector. In fact, it's been long I did what I'm doing right now. I can't remember last time I did document dot whatever. So let me just search for query selector here if I can get it. Then JavaScript query selector. So P, get the P elements. Oh yeah, I remember now. Makes more sense. So this guy works exactly like these guys. Alright. The only difference is, let's say I want to do this with query selector. I'm gonna do query selector. Then instead of saying just hello, I put this to specify that is an ID. So if I do this, it will still give me the same thing. It will still give me the same thing the previous one gave me.
The ID should be inside the parentheses. The
Is it not? Oh, thank you. Yeah. So it's giving me the same thing, right? So I made a mistake. I added extra parentheses. I didn't know. So this similar to this, also this. So I can also say query selector instead of doing get by class name. I say query selector. Then classes will represent classes with dots. So document 2 will still give me the same thing. Now see the funny thing. When we did get elements, remember, pay attention, this one is get elements by. Because IDs can only have one guy. Alright? But the classes, because classes can have more than one guy, is saying get elements. Pay attention to that plural form of it. This one is singular, this is plural. Also the tag names. Because you can have more than one P element, right? Right. Now, when you do query selector, it picks the first guy that matches the query you provided. So what it means is, when I do get element, I do query selector and I do the one with test danger. Though we have multiple test dangers here, it's only returning one for me. Right? Now I can say query selector all. Then it should be able to return the list for me. Now it's returning all of them that have that class. Not as a collection element now, but a collection of elements, but as a node list, a list of nodes. Those element nodes. So this one returns almost the same thing, but then slightly different. Alright? Alright. Likewise, these two. So I don't think you can actually specify I don't think query selector will allow you to specify the elements. It's just classes and this thing that I know of. Okay, yeah, the elements P without a dot or hash is going to assume you are looking for the this thing. Yeah, so can also do that. And then we have query selector. Get me all the P's. Get me all the P's. I need to return an array of 1P because we have only 1P. Does it make sense, Arinze?
yes, it makes sense.
Alright, so that's that. Any other question? Any other question? In the absence of any other question, we'll call it a day today. See you guys next week. I'll upload the video if I'm done. And thanks for coming. See you next week. Remember the assignment of
Thank you.
yesterday. Please do your assignments. Please do your assignments. Practice. Once I'm done saying whatever I'm saying in class, go back to either the video, or your notes, or the code, or even a random video. That's when some of those videos will start making sense. That's where you have questions to ask when you come to next class. Alright? But if you're not practicing, if you're not trying out your hands on things, you're just coming to this place listening, I'll be done with wasting my time here, and then you didn't learn anything. So that wouldn't be a nice result. It's not what we want to achieve. We want at the end of the day you're able to do something. So by next class we'll not be going into the details of into the basics anymore. We'll start building our things. And the number one thing we'll build is that assignment I gave you, that challenge I dropped. Maybe if we do it.
You've not reviewed it.
Yes, I'll review it in that class. Before then, we'll probably do some things, and then I'll review it. Remind me if I miss it, so I'll review it in that class. Yeah. So that's it. Take care, guys. See you next week.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.